I've got a dear friend of mine, Matt Brennan, here today. Matt is Associate Director of Cybersecurity at a company called US Cold Storage. US Cold Storage, for those who don't know, is the third largest cold chain logistics company in the United States. Matt and I have worked together for many years, and I think one of the key things I wanted to bring alive today was we've learned so much together over so many years. I'm very proud to know Matt. I'm very proud to see the work that he has done in really driving maturity. And I think today we really want to build on the poll that I sent out a week or two ago. That poll was fascinating, and I ran this poll also live at CISO Sydney a few weeks ago as well at the conference, and it was around maturity. I'm so keen on understanding the why behind maturity and why we do things. And I think this really is, how do we build mature cyber capabilities and response? And in the poll, only 50% of people are even working and beginning on that journey. It's very rare that we see these things. Let's go straight in. Do you want to just share a few things with everyone about what your view is on building a mature program? Because it's a really difficult thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely has to be planned, and don't expect it all to just magically appear. When you set out on this, you're very eager in the beginning. You're trying to drive a little FUD up the chain to get people to notice what's going on in the business. Sometimes you get reactions that can benefit you to get you something to help, but in the end, it's not really driving real change within the business, right? At least that's been what I've found. Yeah.
Interesting. Root cause. Why is it hard to instigate that change, Matt? And, you're talking about the wider business. What have you found as the stickiness that sort of gets that maturity journey going?
Well, to actually drive it, for us, it seemed to be a path of finally getting things standardized. We got a framework from our parent company of what they wanted to do with cybersecurity standards, right? Mm-hmm. Once we had a little bit of something in place, we were able to start driving some effects into processes and stuff that weren't there before, right? So then once we got going on there, it becomes develop risks. A whole risk function. We really started to move things that way. Communicating to the business about IT stuff really doesn't get you too far. Just talking to them about viruses and CVEs, they look at you like, oh, okay. But if you can transfer this stuff into corporate risk terms and ways that really can impact the business and show them how adversely the business can be impacted, finally you guys are speaking the same language, and then it really feels a lot easier to move after that.
So raw lessons learned. Number one, let's get straight into that. You have to make it meaningful for them, right?
Yeah.
How do you do that, Matt? It's so difficult, isn't it? Everyone says engage the business, right? Check. How do you actually do that?
Well, at first we started as an operation within IT, right? Which proved difficult because you're essentially in the thing you're supposed to be monitoring. So all of my reported security actions were going to the IT director, which, was kind of like falling on deaf ears. Not complaining. That's how a lot of people probably are to this day. At least somebody was doing it. We were taking steps. We were fixing things, but it never really escalated past a certain level. What we started doing was steering committees, things where you can get other people in the room, other people to listen to you as far as leadership within the business. That helped. Talking to parent companies and partners and getting their input and kind of collaborating with your teams really helps a lot, to drive perception. It's different when the guy coming from inside the company is telling you all these things that you have to do. But when you hear it from others and you hear it from, other professionals in the same field, I think it carries a lot of weight.
That's really interesting. A mate of mine I saw last week, we were working on kind of the mining sector and use cases there. And it was fascinating to hear from him how the vendors come in and pitch that tool. And then I link it with another CISO I was working with in the States that's one of our clients. His words are, and I'll paraphrase him and I'll quote him in an essay shortly, but he said, it's very easy to go and we define that tool and then we go and buy it. And then he said, then we implement it, brackets, a little bit, close brackets. Then we go and mature it, brackets, we don't. And when I was listening to that lesson learned, what was really interesting on the mining use case was all the vendors, they solve the X problem, but the X problem is a technical problem. It isn't necessarily something that will manifest specifically or have the same coverage in logistics company in the United States of America versus a mining company in Western Australia. But we all expect it to be the panacea and solve that problem, right?
Of course. That's what it is as important as anything, you got to look at your business. What am I trying to do with this tool? Is this the solution to check a box, or is this a solution to kind of generate more information, generate alerting, generate proactive behavior is what I like to look. That's ultimately where I would love to have my security layout. Right? Just know when something happens and be able to address it before it gets bad.
Okay, so point number 3 then on our learning journey, rather than sort of having the usual talk and summarizing at the end, let's summarize as we go. Point number 3 is you are holding yourself to account here, Matt. Now, you speak very humbly about this. I know what you guys do, and I'm proud to work with you, but more importantly, I see that you don't accept wins and successes as, so many do in cyber. You're pretty humble about it because you know the implication, right? So you're constantly on your own back and against yourself to try and do better and mature that, and which is clearly the topic of this, right? Where does that come from? Is that something from within? Is it something that the business initiates? You need a huge dynamism of energy to hold yourself to account like that, don't you?
I mean, I wouldn't say energy. I mean, as much as, I don't know, call it an insanity, if you will. But, we take a lot of pride. Like, my team and I have a lot of guys that have been doing it as long as the program's been there. We're all pretty invested and, we're smart about it. We're not a huge team, so we have to have as much efficiency as we need, other things. The first time I bought a PAM, I bought the industry standard PAM, and it was so big. I had a two other guy team, right? Like, we couldn't administrate the thing. There's people hired on LinkedIn just to run that PAM. I didn't realize this. So what do? Do I forever hold that PAM there, or do I accept the fact we bought the wrong thing, come in, buy something that fits, buy something that scales with your team and also scales to effectiveness in the business? Because the first one I bought didn't do anything for the business, right?
That's an honest answer, isn't it? Because we're all expected that, hey, we're in cybersecurity, we're good at this stuff, and we can solve it. So you identified an industry. So point number 4 then, industry solutions don't necessarily solve specific company use cases. And you might have to have a whacking great big skill set just to do one thing. And most people, even in large orgs like yours, don't necessarily have the human power to do so.